attending a protest planned tomorrow outside Parliament.
Just moments ago, something no one in London expected suddenly erupted across the capital. A thunderous rumble that wasn't coming from the sky or the underground, but from the streets themselves. As eyewitnesses froze as nearly 2,000 tractors, yes, tractors, surged into the heart of London in a massive coordinated wave. Within minutes, roads were blocked, alarms were ringing, and the entire city felt like it was slipping into a state of controlled chaos. What triggered this? Who organised it? And why did it happen now without warning? Stay with this story because the truth behind this tractor invasion is far more shocking than anyone imagined. London has seen protests before, but nothing like the wave that rolled in today. At first, people thought it was construction equipment being transported, or maybe a farmer's parade. They'd gone wrong. But the moment the convoy breached the outskirts of the city, everything changed. The volume of engines was deafening. Streets that were normally loud with traffic were drowned out by a deep mechanical roar. Steady, heavy, unstoppable. The lead vehicles didn't slow down. They came with purpose, forming thick lines that stretched longer than anything the Metropolitan Police could handle in the moment. Drivers stepped out, waving signs, shouting messages that echoed across the city blocks. Panic mixed with confusion as office workers rushed to windows to see the endless row of headlights crawling through the fog. Londoners weren't sure whether they were witnessing a protest, a blockade, or something far more organised. Within minutes, bridges were clogged. Intersections froze. Emergency vehicles struggled to move. Even the government district felt the pressure as the tractor column pushed deeper, almost like they had memorised the city's layout. Authorities scrambled, issuing statements urging calm while trying to understand how so many heavy machines entered the capital without being stopped. Social media exploded with live streams, aerial shots, and terrified recordings from commuters suddenly trapped between steel, diesel, and blaring horns. As the tractor engines growled on, some residents whispered that this wasn't just a demonstration. It felt like a message, a warning, a line drawn. I tell you, concrete streets are one of the world's most powerful cities, but no one yet knew who was truly behind it or what they intended to do once London came to a complete standstill. As the minutes passed, the situation grew even more surreal. The tractor convoy didn't behave like a chaotic crowd. It moved with coordination, precision, almost like it had been rehearsed. Every turn seemed deliberate, every stop strategically placed, and every cluster formed at key pressure points in the city. Westminster, Whitehall, Parliament Square, Trafalgar Square. Each location became a chokehold. Londoners watching from their balconies and offices felt an eerie tension in the air, like they were witnessing the early moments of a standoff. Police units rushed to respond, but their vehicles could barely navigate the blocked roads, leaving officers on foot weaving through a maze of machinery that towered above them. The drivers, many of them wearing masks or scarves to shield their faces, didn't show aggression. They remained silent, standing by their vehicles as if waiting for something or someone to trigger the next phase. That silence was unsettling. In protest, noise usually fills the streets. But today, after the thunder of engines faded, all that remained was a thick, heavy quiet. The kind that makes people glance over their shoulders and second-guess every sound. Journalists pushed through the crowd, trying to understand the motive, but the drivers only repeated one cryptic sentence: "We warned them." They didn't listen. It didn't take long for speculation to rise. Was this related to rising farming costs? New regulations? A political decision? Or was it something bigger? Something deeper that had been building for months behind closed doors? Meanwhile, the government appeared flat-footed. Statements were delayed. Officials avoided cameras. And online, theories exploded faster than authorities could respond. Some claimed it was a show of force. Others believed it was a demand for immediate action. But the strangest part wasn't the tractors themselves. It was the coordinated timing. Reports came in that similar slow-moving convoys had gathered outside major supply routes leading into London, effectively tightening a ring around the capital. It wasn't a full blockade, not yet, but it was close enough to make the city feel cornered. Businesses closed their shutters early. Parents rushed to collect their children. Transport networks buckled as thousands tried to escape the congestion, spreading like wildfire. And through all of this, the tractor drivers remained calm, focused, and unshaken. Whatever brought them here wasn't impulsive. It was planned, structured, and London was only starting to understand the scale of what it was facing as night crept closer, promising even more uncertainty. As dusk settled over London, the atmosphere shifted from confusion to quiet dread. Streetlights flickered on, illuminating row after row of tractors stretching far beyond what anyone could see. From above, helicopters captured a city transformed into a steel maze, its streets no longer its own. But it wasn't the vehicles that unsettled people. It was the sense that something larger was unfolding, something hidden beneath the surface of this sudden uprising. Government sources leaked whispers that an emergency meeting had been called deep inside Whitehall, with ministers rushing in through side entrances to avoid cameras. Yet even inside, the tension was unmistakable. Advisors clashed over how such a massive convoy breached the capital undetected. Intelligence officials admitted they had no prior warning, no chatter, no hints, nothing. It was as if this operation emerged out of thin air. Meanwhile, outside, Londoners gathered near the blocked streets, keeping a cautious distance from the towering machines. The tractor drivers still refused to advance, retreat, or escalate. They just stood there, waiting, calm, unwavering. And that is what frightened officials the most. A spontaneous protest is unpredictable, loud, unstructured. This was the opposite: controlled, patient, coordinated. It suggested leadership, planning, a message crafted to demonstrate strength without violence. But what was the message? More reports began flooding in from outside the city. Fuel depots experiencing slowdowns, supply trucks halted on rural roads, and convoys gathering near other major towns. It painted a picture of a movement much bigger than London alone. And still, almost no one knew who was orchestrating it. Rumours spread like sparks across social platforms. Some insisted it was a nationwide farmers' revolt, sparked by policies that pushed them to the brink. Others believed it was a calculated pushback against decisions long ignored by those in power. Then there were the darker theories, claims of sabotage, infiltration, or a coordinated effort to paralyse the capital just long enough to force the government's hand. Inside Number 10, panic grew. Advisors urged the Prime Minister to address the nation, but conflicting reports, incomplete intelligence, and internal disagreements created paralysis at the top. Opponents accused the government of losing control. Supporters insisted the situation was being monitored. Yet the public didn't see control. They saw a capital gridlocked by nearly 2,000 machines that weren't moving, and a government that didn't seem to know why. As the night deepened, power shifted subtly but unmistakably from the politicians to the streets. Every minute the tractors remained, the government's grip looked weaker. Londoners whispered that if the convoy had wanted to shut the city down entirely, it already could have. Which meant the real question wasn't what they were doing now, but what they were waiting for. Something or someone was expected, and the entire city could feel it coming, like the tense silence before a storm breaks open. Midnight approached, and London felt like a city frozen in a single, unending moment. The streets were packed, yet strangely motionless, lit by the cold glow of street lamps reflecting off metal frames and tractor windshields. The silence had grown heavier, almost suffocating, as thousands of residents watched from windows, rooftops, and balconies, waiting for the next move in this standoff that no one fully understood. Then slowly, a ripple of movement spread through the convoy. Not the engines, not the tractors themselves, but the people. Groups of drivers stepped forward, forming rows across major intersections. Their boots hit the pavement in sync, a quiet rhythm that sent shivers through anyone close enough to hear it. It was the first deliberate movement since the invasion began, and it carried a weight that felt impossible to ignore. At the same time, further leaks from inside government offices revealed a growing sense of panic behind sealed doors. Ministers argued over declaring a state of emergency, while advisors warned that doing so without understanding the group's demands could ignite a crisis far worse than the blockers outside. Police commanders requested clearer orders, but none arrived, because no one wanted to take responsibility for a decision that might trigger chaos. And then, in the middle of this leadership vacuum, something unexpected happened. At exactly the same moment, across multiple locations, Parliament, key bridges, central squares, drivers raised large boards with bold, simple words written across them. No threats, no insults, just a single message repeated again and again. We will not be ignored. The phrase echoed through the capital. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't extreme, it was calm, too calm. A message of quiet defiance that felt more powerful than any shouted slogan. The meaning was unmistakable. This wasn't a protest looking for publicity. This was a demand for recognition from people who felt unheard for too long. Within minutes, the government's media team attempted to regain control of the narrative, releasing statements about open dialogue, ongoing communication, and necessary cooperation. But these words sounded hollow, drowned out by the sight of thousands of drivers standing shoulder to shoulder in the cold night air. Their presence alone proved they were united in a way the government had underestimated. Even more unnerving was the realisation spreading through security agencies. If the tractors stayed into the morning, the city's financial districts, supply chains and transport systems would grind to an unbearable halt. The cost, not just economic but political, would be devastating. As whispers of negotiations trickled out, the country watched with bated breath. Would the government bend? Would the convoy escalate? Or would a single misstep plunge the situation into something far more uncontrollable? And as the hour passed cautiously into early morning, one truth became impossible to deny. Power was shifting minute by minute, away from the traditional centre of authority and toward the silent, unmoving wall of machinery and resolve lining London streets. The tractors didn't need to move. They had already made their point. And the government, for the first time in years, found itself forced into a position it had avoided for far too long, listening. The only question left hanging over the entire nation was whether it had waited too long to do so, and what consequences would come with that delay when the sun finally rose over a city still locked in the grip of an unprecedented uprising.